Prynhawn da a croeso. Good afternoon and welcome everybody to this AHDB Welsh Strategic Dairy Farm webinar where we'll be looking at dairy share farming opportunities with our strategic dairy farm Penllech Bach. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Marie Powell, the Strategic Dairy Farm's Knowledge Exchange Manager for Wales, and I'm joined today by our panellist of speakers. To the left, we have Matthew Jackson, who is the share farmer and our strategic dairy farm host. And to the right, we have Dafydd Wynne-finch, the farm owner and also business partner with Matthew. Then we have Bryn Edmunds, the agricultural director for HSBC, who covers North Wales. And he also is Matthew's bank manager. And then we also have Nerys, Llewelyn Jones, who is a solicitor and specialises in agricultural law and is the partner and founder of Agri Advisors. I'm also joined with Nick Parsons, who is Dairy Head of Development, who will give us a quick insight into an update on AHDB later on. So I just wanted to start.
Marie, I'll just pause you there. We can see your notes on your slide.
Oh, how so? Is this the one? Yeah, is that better? Apologies. Yeah. Right, so some general housekeeping. All attendees are muted. All questions are anonymous. And if you'd like to ask a question, go to your control box on the right-hand side, following the orange arrow as shown, and ask your questions there. Please ask any questions in English or in Welsh. And today's webinar will be recorded and available afterwards through the AHDB website and on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, I recommend you to subscribe to AHDB Dairy for much more webinars similar to today's. We aim to finish this webinar at 2:30. And if you are wanting to collect Dairy Pro points, please write in the question box your Dairy Pro number. If you don't know that, please state that and just ask and send your email with it, and we can help organise that after the webinar. So we'll be taking questions throughout, but we'll also have a question and answer session at the end of today's webinar. I wanted to start today with a poll, and it's just asking, which will show up on your screens now, and it's just asking, what are you most interested from learning from today's webinar? And there'll be 4 options to choose from. And the options you should see on your screen now are: hear from Matthew Jackson's experience of share farming at Penllech Bach, learn how share farming works and compares to other joint ventures, how young entrants can use share farming to progress their dairying career, and how to approach or work with a bank manager. So as we get results coming in now, we'll have a little look how they're going. Just waiting for the results to come in. And had the results in. So most people are actually interested in learning how young entrants can use share farming, and that's followed by most people wanting to hear from Matt Jackson and his experiences. Well, good news, we're covering all of those today in today's webinar, but it's nice to know what most of the audience are interested in learning. So on to the next, just covering an agenda for today. We're going to hear from Nick Parsons with an update on AHDB strategy and our KPI Express tool. Then over to Matt for an update from Penllech Bach to hear what's been happening since our last webinar with him. Then we'll hear from Matthew and Dafydd about their share farming agreement at Penllech Bach, from where it all began to how it is today. Then we'll hear from Bryn Edmunds for a bank manager's perspective. Then to Nerys to learn about the structures of share farming and other joint venture agreements, and to bring it all to a nice close with a question and answer session at the end. So I'll now like to pass you over to Nick Parsons to give us an update on what's happening here with us at AHDB.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. And if I can have the next slide. What I'm going to touch on is the change programme and the way that we want to encourage feedback and views from all the farmers and stakeholders as well, but around the proposals we've put out, the consultation programme that we've put out for the strategy for the next 5 years. So I'm just going to touch briefly on a couple of the details, but encouraging you to consider doing 3 things this afternoon after this webinar. One, try and take the detail down for the consultation, to look at the KPI tool that I'll talk about, and also consider catching up on the lean management webinar that we produced on Monday, and other events and webinars that we've had. So Marie, thank you. So this is a proposed 5-year strategy, and it's a document that we've put a lot of thought and work into across all sectors. And there's 2 parts to it. One is very much the proposals that Nicholas Sapphire has put out with regards to the change that we at AHDB are looking to move through, but also then the strategy and the way that the next 5 years will be shaped. So the focus on cost savings and driving efficiency and recognising that the work that we do not only comes from the levy, but also from money that we can bring in from third parties. But that levy money, we need to show an efficiency and a drive to get best value for yourselves. On other sectors, there's a consideration around how the levy will be collected and modernising the way that that works, as well as the offer to have every 5 years there will be a ballot across all of the AHDB sectors to be able to consider the future and the direction of travel. So that change document and the change activities are already there. Along with that, the idea to, with the strategy, look to concentrate on certain areas. And across the whole sectors, the idea of improving performance is very much tied into the Farm Excellence platform that strategic dairy farms make up a part of, trying to help improve that productivity and performance, looking at costs. Also, a big part of what we would like to concentrate in the next 5 years is very much flying the flag for produce. So recognising the exit from the EU, giving a push to British produce and looking to concentrate on that. Now that's reflected very much in some of the work that we've been doing, I'll touch on in a second or two, within dairy at the moment. And then the evidence and data, and at the heart of what we want to do as HDB is very much use evidence. We're independent, and that levy gives us that independence, and being able to procure and identify where we can do research and build that evidence base for you to be able to use as independent advice. Thank you. Next slide. So within dairy, it very much fits within that platform, that looking towards environment. The biggest topic, I think, after COVID coming out is going to be very much this environment, looking to create tools and offer services that can support you in your moves through the environment. Focus on research, as talked about, and both environmental, but also around animal health. A big push towards the genetics and continued improvement. Strategic dairy farm network and the way that we work through at the moment at a virtual and digital delivery, but hoping to get back out on farm soon enough to be able to start those one-to-many. So talking from the strategic farms to groups of farmers, encouraging them to take on best practice. And then looking to continue to build on the activity of last year with Milk Your Moments campaign, the new one that we've just released around We Eat Balanced, and encouraging that debate with consumers around continuing to have dairy within their diets. Thank you. So please do take that opportunity to feedback. As much as it won't be your priority today, I would like you to consider that we've got until the end of the month to receive feedback, and we need your views to identify your thoughts and direction, both on the strategy, but your thoughts about the future. So please do take the opportunity to email in or go online, go to the AHDB website, and it's very clear as to be able to offer your feedback on the strategy. Thank you. And flick again, please, Marie. So strategic dairy farms, as highlighted, is a key part to this. We've now got 22 farms, including Matt's farm, and we are looking to move to 25. The website, if you go to the AHDB website, the strategic dairy farm pages identify each individual farm, what they're trying to do, the focus of that farm, and also will hold their KPIs. And you have the ability to measure your KPIs and review theirs, and find a farm that links into the kind of business that you're trying to run. Thank you. A lot of the work we've had to do has moved online, as you can appreciate at the moment, as with today. And we're getting great success at engaging with stakeholders and farmers with regards to these webinars and podcasts that we're running. We'd like to get back out on farm again as soon as possible, but we realise that there's an importance to continue to help try and get this best practice that we've got on the strategic dairy farm shared, and talk to farmers whilst COVID continues. So there's activity. If you can again visit the website, the opportunity to tie in, or after the webinar today, you'll receive an email that will give you details of how to access more events. So around the KPI tool, Optimal Dairy Systems has been around a couple of years. We've got 9 targeted key performance indicators that you can look at within the Optimal Dairy Systems, both for all year round and or block calving, spring or autumn calving. So identifying those measures, those benchmarking that you can do. And this is going to become an ever bigger part of what the industry needs to be doing. Some people be way ahead of even these 9, but others are still challenged and not taking that opportunity. And these KPIs will give you that chance just to start to measure your business against yourself year on year, but also against others and targets that have been set. Thank you, Marie. So use that tool. The opportunity industry targets are there. If you go to the kpiexpress.ahdb.org.uk, that will take you in. Registration literally takes a couple of minutes. We don't need a lot of detail, and that detail really sets up your farm on the system, and then you're straight into being able to measure those KPIs. So what we are going to be talking about, and before Christmas we were focusing on a single one of those 9 KPIs and talking around age at first calving. We're going to be moving through those KPIs, and if you refer to British Dairying magazine, we've had articles in there for the last few months highlighting those KPIs. And I would urge anyone who hasn't started to engage with this, the opportunity to challenge your business by measuring is one of the key areas of trying to drive efficiency and profitability. So please do head to the website and have a look. Thank you, Marie. It will give you this as a measure, and where you sit along that bar, once you've put in for some of the simple KPIs, 1 or 2 pieces of information will give you the measure, and you can see where you sit. But importantly, I would draw your attention to the box in the center, which also gives you how you can improve. So guides and activity and links to other farms where they've had success trying to drive forward that particular KPI. So again, it gives you access to a world of information and support that you can use to try and help yourself move forward with those with that performance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. Now over to Matthew. So Matt, you're our strategic dairy farm host at Penllech Bach. Can you tell us a little bit about the farm and an update what's been happening there since we last spoke to you in September's webinar?
Yep, thanks very much, Marie. So basically, quite a lot's been going on in Penllech since last time. We were still milking then. Cows were just starting to come in and out sort of in the evenings and so on. And we were feeding silage, a bit of silage. We were quite happy with how cows milked this year. Obviously, we've now dried off. But in the meantime, once the cows were all inside, we relayed all existing tracks. So ripped them all up with a dozer, relayed them all so we're ready for next year to try and stop lameness or minimise lameness. We'd seen after 7 years of the tracks being hard worked, if you like, there was wear and tear on them. Stones had become quite proud and prominent, and we wanted to sort that out. So we did that quite well, reasonably priced with local people and hired machinery. We also cleared all the ditches on the farm to try and help with water flow. It's quite a heavy farm, and I was trying to find drains and so forth. We haven't got any maps of the drains of that farm in particular, so we were trying to do a bit of that. We employed a new member of staff, a young girl called Ellie, because the other lad wanted to go back to New Zealand when he gets a chance. We've also done all the TB testing. We finished the season, as I said. Heifers are out on kale and crops. We've had loads of rain, so we're swimming. Calving facilities are all now set up and ready to go to start calving in 1 week, and that's basically it. Everything's been pressure washed, cleaned, ready for next year, serviced, and it's pretty plain sailing now. We haven't actually brought any heifers in this year because we took them down to the other farms, and we're going to calve 320 cows, which will be really simple and efficient with 2 people and myself in and out. Yep.
Lovely, thank you very much, Matt. So we'll now go on to talk about share farming at Penllech Bach with yourself and Dafydd. So could you just talk to us a little bit about what your agreement is and your relationship? How did it form from the very beginning to how it is today?
Do you want me to start, Matt?
Yep.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We're in a situation whereby we own some land. We own a few different farms. So, and it's in our interest to have these, obviously, to have these farms farmed well. And the key to all of it is having good people. We have some let farms on AHA tenancies, and then we have a few FBTs. So we've got experience of lots of different ways of doing things, and then we farm a farm ourselves. And through a combination of the AHAs, the FBTs, and farming ourselves, we've come up with a model that we really like, which is sort of a variant on the share farming system, whereby it's a joint venture whereby we do 50-50, so that we as the landowners do well out of the situation, and the farmer, the share farmer, the partner, whatever you want to call them, they also do well. So it's a case of win-win. So basically, what happens roughly is that we on the farm that we farm ourselves, which also has a percentage of the cows owned by a manager, but we own the majority of we own 75% of the cows, and the manager owns of the unit owns 25%, and we use that as like a bit of a proving ground for finding people to go on and become share milkers in the 50-50 situation, like Matthew's in, or Rhys Williams is in at Paddock Farms, where they basically own all the cows, and we just own the farm. So it is, it's quite an active system from my point of view, in that we're always employing new people and bringing people up through the system, and that's really our training ground. I don't find that I can go out into the marketplace and find a joint venture partner like that. That doesn't happen. We employ people and then get to know each other from a personality point of view, and obviously from a technical skills point of view. And that's how it came about with Matthew. Rhys Williams was was managing Cefn Amlwch and owned a percentage of the cows, and he employed Matthew at Cefn Amlwch, the farm that we farm, and that's how we were able to see Matthew in action. So that when the opportunity at Penllech Bach came along, it was from our point of view, it was a no-brainer to offer it to Matthew, because he had the requisite skills, and we get on. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll just add to it, I suppose. I was working there for Rhys Williams and Dafydd. Started there when I went to New Zealand. Well, I said this last time, I went to New Zealand working with sheep and realised that I wanted to possibly work with dairy cows, because that's what I'd done previously a little bit of. When I asked Rhys for a full-time job, he said I should go to New Zealand. So I did. I jumped on a plane and went over there, saw a low-cost grass-based system, which I thought that's what we wanted to get into. Came back and worked there for 7 years, learning basically a lot about people. Amongst that, I also went on courses and stuff like that, which we were always sort of pushed on to do, pushed forward, discussion groups and so forth like that. And after working there for 6 years, Rhys went off and bought his own farm, and it was actually a really rainy day, and I was having my lunch in the house, and Rhys knocked on the door, and he said to me, "I'm leaving." And I said, "Jesus, what happens? Where does that leave me?" And he said, "You're the new manager." And I thought I wasn't capable of managing, but probably over the last 12 to 24 months prior, Rhys had probably been leaving me more in charge and allowing me to take on that managerial role without me even realising it. So anyway, that's what happened. So after the 7th year of being managing for near 12 months, I said to Dafydd, I was quite keen to do something with my own heifers, which I'd built up. I had about 220. I'd also spoke to the missus and said that, look, we could go to New Zealand or Australia. Australia probably being my chosen place. I'd prefer to live in New Zealand, but I thought there was more opportunity in Australia after being there. And I rang up Dafydd and said, look, I want to do something in the next sort of 12 months, so on. And a couple of months later, he said that he actually had an opportunity that was coming up only 2 miles away from where I originally camped as a child here in North Wales, and where I work now. So it was, yeah, I was overjoyed with that, obviously, and that's how that came about, really. I suppose I can't answer for Dafydd, but I presume that the reason that he saw something in me, the fact that I was quite hard working, I tried to build something up myself through wages. I like taking on responsibility. I'm quite straight to the point. I'm not into lying. I'm not into any nonsense. I'm always straight with Dafydd, and he's always dead straight with me, and we have a good relationship in that respect. Same with staff and anyone I deal with. And yeah, I feel that's why we had that trust, and the integrity was there. Dafydd felt I was worthy of the opportunity, if you like. So, yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Matt. I've just got a question for you, Dafydd. So, how would you recommend other young farmers could get into this position, similar to Matt's, and promote themselves? And what qualities did Matt have that made you want to go into business with him?
Well, I suppose track record. They need to build up a track record, and that starts by working for good people. And need to work in a place for, so I'd say minimum 3 years, sort of 5 years. Then you see various seasons, and that proves that you can stick somewhere. and ideally get promoted within that organisation. So that's an important part of the track record. Getting out and about, as Matt mentioned, discussion groups. They are a terrific forum in which to network for all people involved in farming, particularly in this grazing system. It seems to work very well. So they need to. I need to go to these events, and I enjoy going to these events, and they need to go to these events so that we can all meet each other, get to know each other. So I think track record and networking are very important. Always good to have done a season or two in New Zealand as well. That's to see it from their perspective too. That's good. So that's what I advise to young people. Go and find somebody good and go and work for them, and get yourself known. And then what was your other question? What was the next part of the question?
What qualities did you see in Matt that made you want to go into business with him?
He's good at farming. He could get milk out of cows. Organised, hardworking, and had integrity, and enjoy his company.
Okay. Both of you. So obviously, when you decided you wanted to work together, were there anyone else, any other stakeholders that you kind of needed to rope in to help you make it work, such as an accountant or solicitor or bank manager?
No, I'd say not really. Share farming is a relationship between two people, yeah, and so we have to work it out ourselves, Matthew and I. I mean, we have a template on which we build things. So that is the core part of it. Everyone, there's other people you mentioned. Yes, they are important, because obviously there's the financial side of things, and the taxation side of things, which are very, very important. But the core to it is the relationship between Matthew and I. All those other things we can bring to the table, but they're important, but they're not intrinsic to it. Would be my opinion. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, I was thinking of a word there for something else, but anyway, I lost my train of thought a little bit. Just ask me the question again. Sorry, Maria, I was trying to think of a word.
No, that's fine. People critical to getting you where you are now, stakeholders that were involved and you would have needed. Yeah.
Well, basically, I don't know anything about stakeholders, because I've never been involved with any other people other than Dafydd in this business in Penllech. In the beginning, obviously, I had some equity, which was 220 cows, and I had no cash, so to speak, because every chance I got to put money into something, it was cows. Dafydd then guaranteed a loan for me, very kindly, and Dafydd, being the type of person he is, was willing to do that without me actually paying him an interest or anything. I felt it was only right that I actually paid him something for guaranteeing that, because I don't want anything for nothing. Dafydd always said to me, I can't do this without you, and you can't do this without me. And he's always been very straight like that, which I've always really appreciated. Don't get me wrong, I've not had anything for nothing. And I always feel I'm very, very fair on the farm, with whether it's if I decide to give a member of staff some stock, and they're coming out of my balance sheet, I don't necessarily chase the farm for 2,000 quid, because I can see the big picture. That's the way I feel. There's a lot of trust there and a lot of respect there in the relationship. Like I was saying, Dafydd guaranteed the rest of the loan for me, which enabled me then to go and buy some extra cows, because I was saying, look, let's start with 220 heifers. Dafydd said, no, let's get this place humming. You need those cows to actually start generating cash quickly from the business. And if we were going to invest, if he was going to put all that investment in, you wanted to utilize it wisely, not understocking the farm, and not, and seeing smaller gains really, with still putting in a lot of effort on the year one. So I agreed with that, and I went and bought some Irish heifers, and also I obviously needed young stock for the second year as followers, so I bought some calves as well, and that's what allowed that. The other critical factor in this was getting an accountant from day one for me as a new entrant, and then going to the bank and asking and starting a relationship with the bank and asking for a loan, which initially was a small loan, and I went to the counter. They laughed at me. I went back the second year. I said I was going to own 20 heifers. She said she didn't think it was going to be possible. Went back with 40 odd the following year. The following year 120, and that's when I actually got a bank manager, somebody that wasn't at the high end borrowing lending, but they started to take me seriously and think, actually, this lad's building a bit of equity here, and they started to take me a bit more seriously, and that's when I started to grow and really grow personally as well, and feel like, you know, shit, I'm not wasting my time here. I can actually get somewhere. And you know, when people sort of people like bankers and accountants and stuff like that, and people that employers and so on start to take you seriously, you know, it grows your confidence massively. One thing I wanted to add in before was about being patient. When Dafydd was talking about going in, you know, I don't think that Dafydd every year thought, I'm going to be share farming with this lad. You know, opportunities come up, things arise, and it depends if you've got someone there to take them at the time. I don't think anything was set on stone where he said on a piece of paper that lad's definitely going there and he's going to be doing this. You know, because at any point I could have made a mistake by being rude to somebody on the farm and I could have been out the door, you know. So a lot of people, I feel, especially young people, they'll stay in a job for a year or two and they'll hear their friends are progressing, they've gone share farming and so forth, and all of a sudden they jump off the wagon and they think that they're not going to go anywhere. You know, it's not going to happen. When actually they might have just waited another 3 or 4 months down the line and the opportunity would have come. And this comes from experience. Me constantly in the beginning, when Rhys Williams was employing me, of asking him for money, asking him, look, I want a pay rise, I want to buy more heifers. I was really, really impatient. And he used to say to me, shut up, your opportunity will come. I go home to the missus and I say, what a load of crap. Sick of listening to this every day. And I started rearing my own heifers properly and making a business out of it. And that kept me occupied, and it kept my mind occupied. So I wasn't asking for that money and again and again and again. And it was exactly right in what Rhys was saying, because the opportunity does come and you don't need loads of money in the beginning, as long as you can afford to put food on the table, look after your family, and you've got a means of transport. And I think that's a really important point from my perspective, that young people need to realise that it's not going to happen overnight. You know, we employ people, you go and speak, you have interviews with people, and they think they're going to be share farming within 5 months, 6 months of you employing them. It don't happen like that, you know. So wake up, young people that are thinking of getting into it. It's a long-term thing, just like agriculture in any sector. It's a what's the word? Career path. It's a career path, yeah. It's not a flash in the pan. You don't get rich overnight or get rich quick, and it's not easy. So be prepared. It's long term. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
That's my rant.
No, it's very good.
But I think it's fair to say, obviously, the likes of Bryn, our bank manager, who happens to be our bank manager on this issue. Of course, he's important. He's, you know, and as is the accountant, but it's at the core of it is Matthew and my relationship. Yeah. And then you know, the system that we've got. Do you want me to talk about how we operate our systems? Is that might that be interesting for people?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we operate through limited companies. So I have a limited company, my own limited company. Matthew has his own limited company, and then there's sort of a limited company in the middle. Which has an overdraft, starts at 0 on the 1st of January, It has an overdraft because we don't get much income for the first couple of months of the year, and then into that account, all costs are paid from that account, and all income is received into that account. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the year, sorry, we take out our shares in management fees. So he takes out his share in management fee, and I take my share out in management fees. So it's all done through limited. So his tax business is his tax business through his limited company. My tax business is my tax business through my limited company. So this is a system that my accountant originally came up with. He was from outside agriculture, which was, well, he had some dealings with agriculture, but he wasn't primarily an agricultural accountant. So he just took a system that he used with corporate companies, and I think that worked. That's worked very well for us. It's a system we like, and I think Matt has probably gone on and used that in other places where he is too. So I mean, that's not the only way to do it, but that's the way we've chosen to do it. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I've actually got a question for Dafydd, Matt, Nerys, on your views of this. So would this venture work in other farming systems, such as an high input, high output, as opposed to your system, Matt, which is a spring carving grass-based system?
Yep. So I would start by saying that I was really naive when spring carving was the only thing that could make money in my eyes when I started. And I don't know if I was blinded or whatever else, but we've been around with a lot of different discussion groups and courses and so forth, to New Zealand, Australia, Missouri, in America, all over the place. And there's all different systems that seem to work well. And we went to places with housed cows, all year round housed cows in Scotland, and I was thinking, God, this cost of production here must be shocking. And they were actually better than us, and that really brought me back down to the ground, that they could do that. And it comes down to, at the end of the day, it's a very simple answer in my opinion. It's just the people. If you've got people that are superb operators that consistently monitor cash flows, budgets versus actuals, they know where their business is at all times, and whether that's just managing your bank balance and your cash flow in your head, just knowing at all times where your businesses are. I think that you can make money out of any sector. It's the people, and yeah, I don't know if other people agree with that.
Nerys, what's your views on it?
No, I definitely agree with that. I think it does come down to the people. I mean, the model which Dafydd was explaining, you might think a limited company is a kind of complicated way of doing it, but actually this model is really simple, isn't it, in terms of the way you operate, isn't it? Because it's all through one, bank account, isn't it? Inputs, outputs are in the same place, etc. You've got clarity in terms of this is an annual kind of cash flow position as well, starting at 0 every January. So it's a very simple system, isn't it, in terms of the way that you work it, really. But some people might be listening and thinking, actually, it's a limited company, that's really complicated, there's form to fill in, you've got to submit things to Companies House. Yes, you do, but it's actually a very, straightforward way of doing it from an operational point of view, I think, isn't it? Which is, I think, why, Dafydd, you chose it, and why the accountant probably recommended this is the way to do it in your case, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very simple, and we operate on an annual basis, but so that anyone can get out with 6 months' notice if they need to be. Of course, we don't. When I started out with Matthew, we said the intention is a minimum of 10 years, and in fact, actually, we've just signed on. We haven't signed on. We've had a discussion to say that we're actually going to extend that period. But if things aren't going well, then you need to be able to get out, both parties, and it's incumbent on both parties to be good share farmers, because I want a reputation for being a good person to be a share farmer with, and likewise Matthew does too. So that's again, that goes back to the relationship. That's very important. But in fact, actually, we're not signing up every year for very long periods of time.
No, that's brilliant.
I think a point on that is, with working with the limited companies, I feel that it disciplines me as well, because at the end of the year, I feel that you have to wait till the end of the year to get cash out. So it puts a lot, I work best under pressure, and I put a lot of pressure on myself trying to cash flow myself in my own limited company all year to look forward to that end result. And there's been times where I've asked David before, is there any chance that I could take 10 grand out because I'm struggling or whatever? And we've always had that. David's always been very open to that. But what I really like is at the end of the year, pushing yourself, and at the end of the year, you see the benefit. Because if you were taking out throughout the year, there'd be nothing left anyway. So I like being disciplined, and I feel that adds that pushes me on.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you. So I'll just move on to the next bit, which is with Bryn Edmunds. So, Bryn, can you tell us about your role as a bank manager and also with HSBC? What is your role with share farming or other joint ventures, and how can you support entrants in it?
Thanks, Marie. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Pnawn da I chi gyd. I'm sat here at home. I have been since last March. I haven't been to the office. I haven't seen any of my colleagues or fellow bank managers for at least nearly 10 or 11 months now. And who could have believed that we can just carry on with a laptop and a phone doing what we do. So all of my meetings now with customers over Zoom. So it's an amazing system. So yes, can you move on to the next slide, please, Marie? So yeah, we see I've been involved with many different types of joint ventures where farmers have come together over the last few years, and we funded quite a lot of them as well. So why do farmers form joint ventures? Often you see that there's a farmer with no succession, or the next generation doesn't want to farm on their farm, but they don't want to retire and sell the farm. They want to keep their involvement in farming. So they're prepared to change, and they want to be successful. So they want to get together with another farmer. The other type of candidate is a young farmer without a farm, who doesn't own a farm but wants to get into farming or wants to grow their business. Or the other type might be just two existing farmers pooling their resources to form a joint venture together, and they may even change sector as well. We've had a few instances where beef and sheep farmers have come together and formed a dairy joint venture. So there's all types of reasons and all types of people that do it. But it's natural to feel apprehensive about change, and also to borrowing money as well, because perhaps it's the first time that business or that person has ever borrowed any money before, so they're naturally going to feel a bit apprehensive. So if you can slide forward, please, Marie. So I thought I'd explain a little bit about what the bank manager looks for and the kind of things that we'll be looking for from the farmer when they approach us. So basically, we like to keep things simple. So we need to tick 4 boxes, basically, when we're assessing a proposal to borrow money. And as Matt and David and Nerys have already said, the first box that we need to tick, and these are in order of priority as well, I'll just point out from 1 to 4. The first one, and the most important one, is the person. And basically, what I will do is I'll meet them, hopefully face to face or even on Zoom at this time, and try and assess what kind of person they are, what kind of skills they've got. So basically, the box I'm trying to tick is have they got the skills to deliver on what they want to do? Have they got the skills to deliver on their plan? And that's technical farming skills from past experience, and also financial skills as well, because they are running a business and they will need to have the financial skills as well. Also, we'll try and gauge, what sort of support network they've got. So, have they got friends and family that they can lean on to give them help and advice? Have they got consultants? Have they got a good accountant? All these kind of things build in to helping that business and that farmer to succeed. And also something that's come through very strongly, as you've probably already seen with Matt, is integrity. We try and gauge that from our discussion and our meeting with a customer. Have they got integrity? Are they telling you everything that they should be telling you? Are they making things up? Are they lying? It all forms a view in your mind of your view of that person and their ability to succeed and make the business work. So that's the person. So we need to tick that box. The second box is affordability. So if they're looking to borrow money, can they afford to repay it? So in order to do that, what we try and ask for is projections. So these are financial projections. Usually 3 years figures are enough, because the first year may be a bit of a flat year because they're setting up the business, they're investing a lot. They may even not be producing much income in the first year if they're setting up a new dairy head. So we look for the second and third year to show a normalized year, really, when the thing's up and running and how much profit it's going to be generating. So the figures will show what profit they're hoping to produce, how much cash they're producing as well, and what the end balance sheet will look like. So have they built up more assets? Has the borrowing gone up or down by the end of the year? Also, is the amount borrowed right? Because sometimes people will estimate off a scrap of paper from a builder how much is going to build a shed, and very often the end figure is quite different. So sometimes we ask, are you sure you've done your figures right? For the amount it's going to cost you to build a shed or the milking parlour. Shall we add a little bit, add maybe 10% just to make sure you've got enough to finish it? Because the last thing you want to do is arrange a loan and then find they haven't got enough to finish what they want to do, and they need to come back and ask for more. Very often we will agree to that, but it's always best to agree it at the beginning, really, to make sure the amount is right. And have they included everything as well? Is electricians and plumbing and everything else all included in the figure? Also, what term of repayment? Is it right to borrow for cows over 25 years? Or maybe a shorter term, or maybe if they're buying land, it does make sense to borrow over 25 years. Also, we'd look at volatility within the figures. What if the milk price drops by 3p a litre? What effect does that have on the profits? Can they still make it work, or do we need to maybe look at some of the costs somewhere to make sure that the business can make it work? And contingency plans as well, in case something else doesn't go quite to plan. So those are the kind of things that we'd look for in a business plan. Matt mentioned equity and building assets up. Basically, what equity is what assets have you got behind you. So we'd look for a new entrant into the industry to have some assets that they've been able to build up, that they've been able to accumulate over the years. This can be land, it can be livestock, it can be cash, and it can be property. And it may be assets that have been passed down through the family from parents or from an uncle or whatever, that's just helped them to get a start. So it's just to understand what that equity is. So they need something behind them. And the fourth box, which is a lot of people think this is sometimes the most important farm. You do get people coming to you and saying, right, I've got a farm worth £1 million, here are my deeds, will you lend me some money, please? But actually, it's the least important. It's much more important for us to judge the affordability and the person. But having said that, we still look for some security to protect the bank in case there's something goes wrong. So again, what we'd ask for in security is maybe property or land or a house. We can use livestock as security. So if a loan has been used to buy cows, then we can use the cows as security. Or as what happened in Penllech Bach, guarantees are also something that will work. So if you've got a friend or a family member or a business partner who might be wanting or willing to guarantee your borrowings, then that's something else that we consider as well. Next slide, please, Marie. So when we assess lending propositions, the thing to remember is when you approach a bank is the bank wants to lend. It's what we do. That's what banks are for, basically, is to lend money. So we're very keen to try and find a way. And sometimes we see a business plan and we don't think it'll quite work, having discussed it with the farmer. So let's try and re-engineer it. Let's try it in a different way. So that's certainly my approach. Is if Plan A doesn't quite work, well, let's try and find a way. Let's try and re-engineer this and find a way to get you to where you want to be. So when you're having that meeting and when you're meeting the bank manager, the farmer's objective is basically to provide the evidence and convince the bank manager that the proposals will work. This is what the business plan is for. And I'll just give you a few pointers on the next page of how a good business plan should look. So next slide, please, Marie. So a good business plan, not too long, please. I've seen lots of business plans over the years, 40, 50 pages with all sorts of facts and figures in there. And I find it just confuses everybody. There's too much information in there, and no person can possibly take it all in and understand it and remember it all, really. So the most important tip is simple is often the best. And as a guide, 2 pages of a story or 2 pages of explaining what you're doing. Bullet points are fine, and 3 pages of figures. So don't waffle, because you're just wasting your time really in doing that. If it's not relevant, then you don't need to include it. I don't need to know that you passed your grade 5 music exam when you were 17. It's got to be relevant to the proposal. Show integrity. So you yourself may know that you've got a slight weakness in your business plan. Don't hide it. Point it out to the bank manager. That's integrity, really. So if there's a weakness there, tell the manager, and then we can find a way of working through it, or some way of strengthening the plan. The plan needs to be realistic, so don't be over optimistic, and be clear, so that whoever's looking at it, you yourself and the bank manager, can be clear and really understand what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go. You should include a summary of the farm's resources. What I mean there is how many acres of land will you be farming? What are the terms? So if it's a 5-year business tenancy or a 10-year business tenancy, what the rent is, what the terms are for reviewing it, how many cattle you've got, what the livestock is, what ages they are, and what they're worth. Try and put a value on it, and also what machinery you have as well. So all the farm's resources. There should be a projected profit and cash generation in there. Often what we see, especially in spring calving dairy systems, is a CFP. So that's a simple 1-page document that shows all the income coming in. It shows all the costs going out, and then what cash or what profit is left over at the end of the year. So that's a really simple document. It's easy for the farmer to understand, and it's easy for the bank to understand as well. And we very often we see year 1, year 2, and year 3, just to show how things are progressing over the years. I've already touched on this, but realistic assumptions for capital expenditure. So if you are building a shed or a milking parlour or installing tracks or whatever, get some quotes and maybe update it if it's 6 months old from a builder, and try and pin them down to accurate figures, so that at least then you're asking the bank manager, for the right amount. So you're confident that you've asked for enough, and the bank manager is confident that you've asked for enough as well, and you're not worrying that, oh, am I going to get this in within budget? And everybody starts stressing about that then. Sensitivity analysis. So what if milk price per litre goes up by a penny or 2 or 3 up or down? What effect does that have? What if interest rates go up or down? What if the cows are producing 500 litres less per cow than you thought? What if there's some extreme weather? So all these things, just put them into the figures and adjust them just to see what effect those would have on your figures and your profit projections. And another thing I look quite carefully at as well is, does the farmer understand the plan? Very often, if they prepared it themselves, then they do, because they've been fully involved in preparing it. But sometimes we do get plans that have been prepared by a consultant or through Farming Connect or whatever, and it's fairly clear early on that they haven't really read it, and they're not quite sure. When I ask them questions, they give me a blank look and start scrolling through the pages. So it's quite important that you understand the plan, and can they explain what's in it. So two tips really: keep it simple, not too long, and make sure you understand it. Yeah, next slide, please, Marie. So how do we fund? Well, basically, we've got three ways of funding. Very often, the farmer will need an overdraft facility. So that's something for day-to-day needs. It's for paying bills, and the milk check comes in, or the sales proceeds come in, and then the amount turns over every month or every year. So normally we get an annual forecast that shows month by month what the money coming in and out of the bank is, and what the end balance at the end of each month is. So that'll tell the farmer and the bank what overdraft facility they need then for the year, and that gets reviewed once a year, around about the same time every year. Second type of borrowing would be a loan. So this would normally to buy something. So they'd be to buy land, buy a farm perhaps, build shed, invest in sheds, milking parlours, tracks, or it could be stock. So the interest rate on a loan may be variable or a fixed rate, or it can be a combination of both. The loan can be split to have some variable and some fixed. And the loan can be a period from 20 up to 30 years, depending on the asset that you're funding. So normally, the term of the loan is linked to the life of the asset. So longer term loans will tend to be for sheds and milking parlours and land, whereas shorter term loans will be for machinery and livestock. And we have got specific loans as well for machinery and equipment, where we can use that machine or that tractor or whatever as security against the loan. So that's a specific type of assets. Yes, next slide, please, Marie. So as a summary, these are just a few of my thoughts as to what makes a successful venture, a joint venture, or any business really, at the end of the day. The first one is to focus, basically, keep it simple, less costs and more output. So make sure there's more cash coming in than going out every year from normal trading. Focus on financial performance as well as physical. So yes, focus on how well the cows are performing, calving index and litres produced, but also check the bank balance, check how you're doing against your budgets and cash flows. Plan ahead every year. So it's good practice to do a budget at the beginning of every year. So at least then you've got an idea of where you're going and how you're going to get there and what the year will produce. Of course, the plan will change. And a lot of people say to me, well, I can't budget because I don't know what the milk price will be in July. But that doesn't matter. Put the milk price in as it is now, and you can always adjust the plan as you go in through the year. If the milk price changes, that's fine. You can adjust the plan, but at least you've got an idea of where you're going. Monitor the performance against the budget. Matt mentioned this earlier as well. So check it once a month just to see that your costs are about right of what you said they were going to be, and the income is what you were expecting to be. Benchmarking works quite well. I've got a number of customers who are in discussion groups. The Grazing Gogs is one, well-known one in North Wales, and these are very good for support. So farmers support each other when they've got a problem or an issue, and they can tap into that for help and advice. And also challenge each other as well. So the farmers will say, well, why are you doing it like that? Couldn't you do a better job of this? So it's very good to get that challenge as well. Another thing I'd say as well is talk to your bank manager, accountant, solicitor, consultant, include them in your decision making, and the earlier you involve them, the better. Because if you've got a new venture or a new plan that you're looking to put in place, we can help you maybe put the ideas together at quite an early stage before you go too long down a road that might not work. Also, what I try and do as well sometimes is act as a critical friend. So when I have my annual or regular meetings with my customers, I'll point out something. Well, why are you doing like that? Why isn't that quite working as well as you should? Or why are you investing in this thing? It's not crucial to your business. So be slightly critical. So we're not doing it just to be nasty or fall out, but just to try and be helpful, really. So just to try and be a critical friend. And I suppose the final one is a trap that some farmers fall into is don't focus too much on tax minimisation. What I mean there is that if somebody's showing a profit at the year end and there's a danger of paying tax, don't just buy something to save tax, for example, machinery, if you don't really need it. You know, it's a waste of money really buying machinery that you don't need just to save tax. That's me done. The last slide is just showing our forward planning booklet. So it's a booklet we produce every year, HSBC Agriculture. So if anybody is pulling together a business plan, there are some good figures in there and tips to help, gross margin figures to help point towards that. The 2021 version is going to be coming out in the next few weeks. We did hold it back this year because we wanted to know the outcome of Brexit before producing it. So keep an eye out for that in the next few weeks, and it'll be on the bank's HSBC Agriculture website if somebody wants to download it from there or order a physical copy. Thanks very much, Marie.
No, thank you, Bryn. It can be quite daunting, I think, for someone to approach a bank manager for the first time. So a question for you, Matt. When did you reach out and work with Bryn in your kind of journey of in being a joint venture, really?
I suppose I started out with somebody on the desk where I had borrowed £3,000, and then I was then offered to go into the back room to talk to a lady that was a little bit higher up, and then I had another lady when I got to £30,000 borrowing. And then on from then, I actually had a different bank manager prior to Bryn when we actually were going share farming. Somebody that Dafydd introduced me to. And then he was with us about a year and he left to do something else, and then Bryn from then. So just touching on what you were saying there, Marie, when we finally, after a couple of years of really being bothering myself about finding a second unit and being bored and all the rest of stuff, one lad told me, a fella called Joe Delves, really good story from down south. He is not far from London, I think, but he's definitely from down south. He's a Cockney. And Joe, I was on a course with Joe, and I rang him up 2018, and I said, look, I'm just fed up. I can't find a second farm. I found loads for sale, but the chances of me ever owning my own farm, it never even came into my mind. Cow ownership never really crossed my mind until it happened. So I always thought it was impossible. And I rang Joe up one day after doing something called a wealth creation course with him. And I said to him, look, you know, we've had a crap year, we had a poor spring and then a really harsh summer in 18. And he said to me, why don't you just go? He said, what's the worst that can happen if you go to the bank and ask how much you can borrow? And I never ever thought in a million years that they would have even considered me. And that's what I did. So I did an equity, I actually drew an equity growth chart, which I got from Dairy NZ. And I went and rang Bryn up and said, look, you know, what's the chance of buying a farm? And he said, well, come in and see me. You know, for anyone out there that is afraid of going and asking, that, well, realistically, the worst that can happen is they say no this time, but it's always a really good experience, and it certainly challenges you, and it gives you that boost, gives you that confidence boost that you've actually been and done it. And sometimes you might just find out that you're actually in a better position than where you first thought you were. And going and seeing the bank manager, obviously you don't want to be going hassling them every week, but you're building that relationship, you're letting them know where you're at all points. And I say this, which is not quite true this year, but normally I would deliberately send Bryn the budgets without him even asking, just to keep him in the loop and he can see where they are, you know, see what you're doing. I have actually got the budgets ready for you, Bryn, and I need to just send them through to you. Richard's doing that with me. But yeah, you know, constantly keeping somebody in the loop, somebody important like Bryn, that ultimately has, you know, a lot of influence on where you're going and where your career path is. Because if you lose that relationship, you know, you lose, I feel you lose a little bit of your momentum. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Thank you, Matt. We'll just move on now to Nerys's slides. And Nerys, you'll provide us with an insight of the different joint ventures out there and some disadvantages, advantages, and explain us through that.
Thanks, Marie. If you can move the slides on just one more again, then please, thank you. Really, I think the key messages that I got is that your starting point is a blank canvas. We've heard a lot from Dafydd and Matt and Bryn about the importance of the people involved and getting that relationship set up and an understanding in relation to that. But essentially what you've got is an agreement between two people, as I was saying earlier, isn't it? And that agreement can be whatever you want that agreement to be. So there is no legislation which says this is how a share farming agreement has to be set up. Very different to what the position is actually in New Zealand, isn't it? But we haven't got legislation which said this is how it's got to be, isn't it? So it's completely up to you as to how you set this up. And there's lots of different models out there. This being one really good example, but there are lots of others. And I think if we probably asked Dafydd and Matthew, they probably looked quite closely at different models there were before you entered into this and went into share farming, looking at all the different types there, like Matthew was saying earlier about going to see, spring calving as opposed to autumn calving and all around calving, etc. It's important to look at what other options are out there and to consider how they would work for your particular sets of circumstances. So I think that's really important to understand that there are those different options available and that each venture is slightly different. So even if you might say, well, look, I quite like Dafydd and Matthew's model, I might like to adopt that for our own in terms of the venture that we're going to, there may still be slight differences that you want to make to that venture to make it your own, isn't it? And even Dafydd and Matthew might say, now, actually, this is the original agreement we had, and we've adapted that over time as well, isn't it? It doesn't mean that it has to stay static as well. It needs to be a business model that's flexible, that allows you to grow and that allows you to maximize your potential as well, because with every business, hopefully the aim is to grow it, isn't it, and to make it even better year on year. If you move on to the next slide. So the key elements, I think, and again, been emphasised several times this afternoon, isn't it, is about making sure that you've got that trust in place, but also that mutual benefit. It's quite interesting listening to Matthew and Dafydd because they were both very clear about understanding the perspective of the other party in their agreement, isn't it, and then really understanding where the people who are going into business with their perspective on it and where they stand, I think is really, really important, because that's the only way that you kind of make sure that you've got this mutual benefit in place. Because if one person is getting more out of something than the other, there's always that mismatch then in terms of the balance between the different parties, and it's really important to make sure that you have got that mutual benefit. And then, in terms of tax, there's a little bit of tax there. And Darren mentioned tax at the beginning earlier on, and there are considerations in terms of tax, especially perhaps for the landowner, initially, that need to be considered as well as to why you might want to offer certain models as opposed to others. So if we move on to the next slide, so the next slide is one example, and that's the example we've got here. So you could decide, actually, I'm going to create a new business, a new limited company. There's a benefit of having a new limited company in that it's a separate person. It's a new person as far as the law is concerned. It's an independent person in its own right. And yes, it does carry with it certain formalities in terms of Companies House, and there are certain rules that have to be adhered in relation to that from an accounting point of view. But as Matthew was saying as well, there's an element of discipline that's involved in that, isn't it, which makes sure that you follow that type of structure in relation to it. And in this particular instance, we've got two limited companies being the shareholders in that joint venture limited company overall, isn't it? So you could be in that position, or you could have a limited company with two individuals being the shareholders as well. You don't have to have the limited companies that sit within that joint venture limited company as well. So there's different ways of doing it. And the directors and shareholders, so the directors are the people that run the business, the shareholders are the people that own the business. And again, in terms of your share farming venture, you may have differences in terms of who's perhaps working on a day-to-day basis in terms of running certain aspects of the business, with others with different roles as well. And that enables you to have that variance, and also potentially to involve other people within your limited company and within your venture as well. So you might have, you know, Dafydd was talking earlier about people trying to inspire other people to come up through the ranks as well, and to encourage them to take on more responsibility. So there's opportunities within that limited company model to enable people to have, you know, perhaps a director role, more managerial type of responsibilities, and then building them up into having a position where they have equity as well. So that's one option. But just to show that there's lots of different options, really, if you move on to the next slide. So another option would be a kind of a contract farming type of model, and as I said, there's no legislation that it goes behind that contract farming model. So essentially, again, it's a contract between two parties as to how you decide to work together on a particular enterprise. But if you think of contract farming, as it shows in the diagram there, as the farm being where the first business, the business one, is located, and then you've got business two providing services, if you like, to that main business, isn't it? And at a basic level, that's your contractors that you get to do into your fencing, etc. And you've all got contracting arrangements going on in your farms, having those third parties coming in to do certain services for you, isn't it? So a contract farming model in terms of dairy is an enhanced model in relation to that, whereby you're saying to one person or another business, look, can you provide me with these services, isn't it, which might include the milking, it might include contract rearing, which again you can have as an extra onto a model that you've got in terms of share farming as well, isn't it? So you can have combinations of all of these different models working together as well. The next slide then, I think, shows a share farming model. So share farming is where you don't create a new business. So you've got two independent businesses, so business one, then a business two, and they have an agreement between them which says this is how we're going to work together to farm a particular holding. And essentially the only thing that governs that relationship is that agreement or that contract that they draft up between them, stating how they're going to split things, how they're going to split any profit and loss in relation to that farming business, who's going to be providing which inputs, etc. So again, there's no new business being created in that model, no new entity like we've got in this instance in terms of a limited company, but you've got two separate businesses with their own tax position, etc., working together in relation to that particular farming enterprise. We go on to the next slide as well. Yeah. And then another option is a farming partnership. Now, farming partnerships are very common, aren't they, in terms of farming businesses? But farming partnerships are joint ventures in themselves, because you don't necessarily have to have family members being in partnership together in the farming enterprise. You could have different people coming together to work together in a particular on a particular holding or group of holdings as well, isn't it? So again, it's another way of setting up that joint venture, isn't it? And maybe one which has a little bit more flexibility than the limited company in terms of the accounting side of it, etc. What people are looking at doing now is the next slide, which is the LLP model. So a lot of people are looking at creating these joint ventures by virtue of a limited liability partnership. And the benefit of that is it's still a new person, a new legal entity from a legal point of view or from an accounting point of view. However, you still have the benefit of being taxed as individuals within that LLP. So there are benefits to an LLP arrangement as opposed to a limited company sometimes for some setups. So if you're wanting to be halfway perhaps between a traditional partnership model and a limited company, an LLP is an option in between. And there's nothing to say that you can't as well go from one model to another. You may start doing one particular model for 5 years, etc., or whatever period of time that you want it to do that enterprise, with a view to going into a different model over time. And there can be tax advantages as well of moving between one model to another to consider, which you should be discussing with an accountant as well. Next slide. So really, it's about trying to set out what those heads of terms are at the beginning, isn't it? What do you want to achieve? You know, what are your goals, isn't it? What are your objectives? What the time frame is? You know, we talked about having the option of being able to bring it to an end at any point in time within that kind of annual framework, which I think is really important, and which is one of the main benefits of this model, isn't it? Is that there is that recognition that you have to have that exit strategy as well, because that's really important in terms of that legal agreement as well. Where do you want to be? Perhaps not in 2 years' time or 5. You know, where do you want to be in 10 years' time? Where is this taking you? What is the ambition behind this, and what is the purpose of this kind of new venture for you? And I think, you know, there's lots of support and help out there to perhaps enable you to flesh out what some of those things mean for you, and perhaps to get into the detail in terms of the kind of terms you might want to hold and have in a legal agreement. And essentially, you know, we talk about you know, the people being at the core of this, isn't it? And they are. The reality with people, though, is we're human as well, aren't we? And things don't always go to plan, and you know, things don't always get communicated sometimes in the way that it should be. So the benefit sometimes of working with somebody through these heads of terms and understanding them is that you get clarity then in terms of what these are. And I think that the main benefit in terms of Dafydd and Matthew's relationship is that clarity of communication about exactly what their position is, how it works in practical terms, as well as in terms of financial and legal position in terms of. I think that's my slide done, I think.
Well done, Nerys. That was a lot of information in 10 minutes.
Lots of information, but I think there's you know, it's trying to kind of account for what might happen if things go wrong, isn't it? How is that going to work? How are you going to be able to act it? And I think you know trying to consider everything and those regular meetings and reviews, isn't it? You know, that those kind of, you know, phone calls any time of day to be able to speak to your business partner about anything that's worrying you as well, isn't it? As well as those kind of more formal meetings where you have to really sit and look at the business from outside as opposed to looking at it as if, you know, you're looking at it day to day, isn't it? So it's really important for every business as well.
Thank you for that, Nerys. Yeah, that was an awful lot in a short amount of time, so thank you so much for that. That kind of brings us now to our question and answer session, and I'll kick it off by asking all of you, what in your experiences has led to successful ventures, and what in your experience has led to failures in some ventures or you've heard of?
Shall I? Because I think one of the things that has led to failures has been the lack of communication. So lack of communication and clarity from the outset as to what the position is, and I think those are the ones that don't necessarily end up being successful, you know, successful ventures. So that communication is absolutely key at the beginning.
Yeah, it needs to be a combined agenda. It's not, you know, it's not me and you, it's us. Sounds simple, but it's the core to it all. Rather than thinking what's in it for me, or what's in it for him, us.
Yeah, I would agree. It's got to be win-win. Everybody's got to be winning. Everybody's got to be progressing. As regards to failures, I don't know about failures, but maybe understanding what each other's roles are in the business. And that was quite interesting that I'm also in another partnership, and it's really easy. Say now, for instance, one person's taking charge, and the other party, you know, the other party becomes involved with staff or so forth. When they haven't actually been dealing with staff, it can all of a sudden communication can get it can cross over quite quickly. And again, it's communication, because if I have any issues like that, I'll ring Dafydd up and ask him, what do you reckon to this? And he'll be dead straight and dead direct, and you nip it in the bud straight away, and everything comes back to normal. It's got to be done there and then. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I agree, Marie. Communication is key. You asked the question, you know, what happens when businesses fail. I wouldn't say I've had experience directly on a business failing in this sector, but that's the kind of thing that does happen. You know, if the business does get into difficulty, then the earlier they seek help, the better, the more people can help them. So the earlier they tell the bank, the earlier they tell the accountant or the consultant or whoever that there is an issue, the more everybody can chip in and help with that issue, whatever it is. But if that business owner keeps it to him or herself for too long, the business is beyond help by that stage sometimes, and that's what leads to it not working. So communication is key with everybody, I think.
So if, for the audience watching, if they're interested in this and it's not really an option on the table at the minute, Matt and David, where would you say they can start to progress this, to look into it?
Well, I would say, sorry.
You go.
I would say that when I started off, let's say 15 years ago, there wasn't the same amount of discussion groups or people to turn to or network as what there is now. There's basically whoever's interested in this, right, whether they're in a city, town, country, you know, countryside, whatever, rural areas, there'll be someone in a very, very close proximity that's willing to help them and willing to give them advice. They can go on, turn up at people's doorsteps. Could I come on a grass walk with you? Would you mind talking to me about this? Call up myself, David, Rhys, people that want to help others. That network is there for anyone. It's so easy. It's just on the doorstep. And people, don't be afraid of asking for help, because the 99% of people want to help others. You know, I love talking. I like talking about what I've been doing, obviously, and I'm more than willing to help and, you know, exchange that information and stuff. And I'll say another thing, one thing, and in particular, this isn't being biased, in particular, I find spring carving, the people involved in spring carving and autumn carving, dairy farming, in this sort of blocks systems, are very, very open with their information, especially financial information and stuff like that. And it's there on your doorstep. So, yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, ring people up, go and see them. You know, and go, you know, arrange an appointment and go and see people. People are always happy to, nearly always happy to give time, and it shows your intent and commitment. A phone call or an email doesn't really mean anything. Go and eyeball somebody face to face, meet them.
Yeah. And then a quick question. So someone's quite certain they think they found the right person to work with. They might not have a track record. Bryn, how important is a track record to when you look at possibly lending them to build against their equity to build that up?
Yeah, track record is important, but what I always think, you know, if somebody comes to me and they haven't got a particular skill in something, that they can then bring somebody else in to do that for them. So I'm trying to think of an example, you know, somebody who may not have no idea how to put a cash flow together, to put a business plan or how to monitor it. So they bring somebody in to help them prepare that. And as long as that person understands what they're doing within the business, and they can explain it, and they're learning, and they're bringing in people with other skills, then that can, you know, that can tick one of the boxes, the 4 boxes that we're trying to tick.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Nerys, a quick question for you. So if everything's going well, and yes, they found the right individual, when should someone seek possibly advice from a solicitor?
I think when they're ready to perhaps draft an agreement up which encapsulates the agreement they've reached, isn't it? But also I think it's really important to note that there is support via the venture scheme with Farming Connect as well available to provide, for those that are based in Wales, of course, isn't it, to provide financial support to take you through this process as well, and that will enable them to get advice from a consultant and also legal advice as well, and to perhaps test out their proposed venture a little bit as well before they formulate it into writing, isn't it? So I think there is support out there. And the other thing as well is that they Farming Connect offer a mentoring system as well. So if you've got a situation where you'd like start support, which obviously is out there, isn't it? But there is a kind of a formal mentoring kind of provision available by Farming Connect as well, which can give you, I think, about 15 hours of somebody's time to support you through the process as well.
Lovely, thank you. I'll just bring the question and answer session to a close, but are there any burning bits you guys want to add before moving on? No?
I just want to add, Marie.
Yeah.
I just want to add one thing. Where Nerys had on a heads of terms to say where do you want to be in 10 years, I always found it really difficult to make in goals and written goals and stuff like that, to know where I want to be. Where do I want to be? Where do people want to be? What do they need? And I did some wealth creation course with a guy called Michael Murphy, who runs the Positive Farmers conference. And he said, so I've done all these courses, I've spent a fortune on trying to find out how to make goals, how to write down goals. And he said one line to me, which was, if you don't know where you want to be in 10 years, ask yourself where you don't want to be in 10 years, and it'll come immediately. And it was so basic. All the 20, 30 grand I've spent, all the years I've been doing courses, that was worth it for just one sentence, because it was so easy for me to process that in my mind. I know exactly where I don't want to be. And all of a sudden you come to where you want to be. And I don't know if people are struggling with stuff like that, but I always did for about 7 or 8 years. And that, I just thought I'd chuck that in there because that was quite important to me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. Well, thank you, Matt, Dafydd, Bryn, Nerys. Your insight's been excellent and your answers. So I just wanted to draw everyone's attention that this webinar was jointly delivered with the Farming Connect, and they have lots of help and assistance with one-to-one surgeries and funding. And if you're watching this live, quickly, if you need to grab the contact details, please do. But I'll also be circulating it afterwards on an email. They also have some webinars coming up. Tonight they've got one looking at spring calving index and furthermore on preparing for spring turnout. But also more to wrap it up with further information out there. So AHDB have joint venture guides looking at all the different structures available. They have share farming templates, so you don't need to start it from scratch. They're there pre-prepared for you to run with and to tweak as is needed. Also, there's Entrepreneurs in Dairying course by RABDF. So that's mostly aimed at young entrants wanting to gain business skills, which is excellent. And if you're interested, I'd go online, have a look at it and see if you can get your place on it. And then again, speaking again, as Nerys said, Farming Connect have got Mentor Eventure, which I'll talk about on the next slide. But if you're after any information from today's webinar, please get in touch with your local AHDB Knowledge Exchange Manager, which you can find on the website, or just contact myself. My information is down at the bottom and we can point you in the right direction and offer help and assistance. But adding to the Venture programme, it's an excellent service delivered by Farming Connect, where it essentially just matches up landowners and young entrants and just tries to help them collaborate. And if you're interested, it could be a good starting point for people in Wales. And yes, it's only applicable to people in Wales, apologies. So now I just want to say a massive thank you to all of our participants for listening, and a massive thank you to our panelists for your enthusiasm. It's been exceptional. And again, questions we haven't answered today, we'll pop them in a wrap-up email and we'll contact you afterwards to make sure that your questions have been answered. So thank you very much from us today. We hope you have a good afternoon and goodbye.
Are we meeting online again after this?